Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False God, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I am Bruce.
And welcome to the first of two deck tales of the season. We have a deck here that we just couldn't figure out what to choose for Bruce's deck, and we realized that somehow we hadn't chosen this deck to talk about before. I believe this is the first deck that you made
Since starting the podcast?
Since starting the podcast.
I think so.
Because I think we were gonna talk about it, and then you're like, I want to get some games under my belt with it, and then just kept pushing it off, and then we found other decks to talk about.
Was Yennett the one that won the little contest I was running before we started the podcast? I did a thing on Twitter with a number of legendary creatures that I wanted to build, and let the Twitter folk cast their ballots. So I had a top 32 and whittled it all the way down to number one. I think Yennett was the winner of that one. So,
and here, a whole 18 months later,
yes,
we're here to talk about Yennett, Cryptic Sovereign. For those who don't know, Yennett, Cryptic Sovereign is a 5-mana creature. It's black, blue, white, 2, 3/5, legendary creature Sphinx, flying, vigilance, menace. Remember those three. Whenever Yennett Cryptic Sovereign attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If that card's converted mana cost, or mana value, is odd, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, draw a card.
Just to be clear, for those of you who are not familiar with Yennett, you will want to take a look at the card. Look at the images, look at the art in the card, look at everything about the card. Everything about the card is about odd numbers. With from the obvious power and toughness and mana value cost of 5, all the way down to the number of words in the flavor text, the number of pillars in the picture, the number of everything about this card. It's all odd numbers, even Yennett.
The collector number, 51 of 307. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So what this deck, man? I've seen this deck perform. I've seen this deck fall. It's a very exciting thing to watch.
There doesn't seem to be an in-between with the deck. Mm-hmm. I'll say that right up front. It seems to either win explosively or fail dramatically. Ideally for me, I saw Yennett and thought, okay, I am just going to build this with all odd mana valued cards, because that way, every single time I flip the card over, I'm getting, it's going to be a land, or it's going to be an odd, or it's going to be a card that I can put out, or a card that I can play right away. So I intentionally did that. I'm trying to remember if there were any cards that were actually even costed, and I wanted to believe there were a couple.
There were the last time I looked at the list, but looking at it now, I don't believe those cards are actually.
Yeah, I believe I cleaned that up a little bit.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be completely sure.
You wanted to be completely on theme. I get it.
I wanted to be completely odd, and
yeah,
I am.
The cards that I remember that were even cast before were 2 of the 3 courts that could fit in this deck. I think it was probably the white and the black one.
Yeah, I had them in mostly because I just had them,
right,
and wanted to try them out, and just decided, what am I doing? There's a theme with this deck. We can get to that.
It's not odd enough.
The deck just wasn't odd enough, so I went full on. So like I say, every card in the deck is either a land or odd. So,
I see that.
Yeah.
There are some cards. So we just before recording, we laid this out on the table, and we looked at the architect list, kind of laid it out to the custom categories that you've got.
Yeah.
And there are cards in here that I've not seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of this deck. We've got Sorcerer's Apprentice. Is that what it's called?
Yes. And Andy asks what it's called because the version I have is a black bordered Korean, I believe.
I want to say it's Japanese, but
could be.
Yeah.
Either way, it's where was it here?
It's blue 1. It's a 0/1, and for blue and tap, you get 3 colorless mana.
Yeah.
Creature. And
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. I put him in there. I put him in there because I wanted ramp.
Yeah.
And I just thought he's been a fun ramp card for me in the past, and I realized that as a 0/1 creature, it's pretty vulnerable, but it proves to be a lot of fun. And
it's a body if you need it.
Yeah, and the deck is. The deck, I would say it's primarily white blue, but there's a lot of blue, so it's rarely a time when you don't have the blue mana to sink into it to add 3 more. So I went that route. As long as we're talking, ramp, I might as well just go deep into the ramp portion.
Please do.
Most ramp in good commander decks, especially when we're talking mana rocks, is going to cost 2. We all know this. There's plenty of 2 mana rocks.
Yeah.
There's lots of them.
Moxen, Soul Ring, Mana Vault.
Your signets, your
right.
et cetera, et cetera.
That's what you mean.
Yeah. They all cost 2.
Yeah.
But I decided I wasn't going to play that game. And so I have obviously Soul Rings in the deck. And my 1 copy of Mana Vault is in the deck. However, all the rest of the mana rocks are all 3 mana rocks. So, and I opted for a few ones that are a little bit different.
Yeah, they're doing some excellent things with 3 mana rocks lately.
Right.
And I'm sure you could, slot in and out as you see fit. I really enjoy the inclusion of Cultivator's Caravan.
I love that one. I really enjoy the card. For those who are wondering,
it's a 3 mana artifact vehicle. It's a 5/5, and crew for 3, which amazing.
Right.
Or you can just tap it to add any one mana of any color. It's a body when you need one, if you can get the 3, which generally isn't too hard.
Well, when I put it in the deck, Yennett has 3 power.
Yeah.
So my initial thought was there were going to be times when I was not going to want to swing with Yennett, or maybe I don't want to block with Yennett. So I could tap Yennett because Yennett has vigilance, so it would act as a surprise blocker. Tap Yennett, use the Caravan as a 5/5, and block somebody with a bonus 2 power on the front end without them really realizing what they were walking into. So because let's be honest, most people haven't played Cultivator's Caravan, and there's certainly, if you haven't crewed it at any point in time, people are going to suddenly be surprised when you do. So I wanted to give that one a shot. Another one that I've really started hyping lately is Spectral Searchlight. I appreciate that this is a 3 mana rock that essentially just taps for the colors that your commander can produce.
Yeah.
But I love the idea that you can give that mana to somebody else.
There's so many points in so many games where somebody at the table is like,
just needed one more.
Just
and yeah, so I haven't used it that often for other people, but I will say that I have used it, and it has been a lot of fun. So I am. That card is in no danger of losing its slot in the deck. That's for sure. So.
I just put one in one of the new decks that I'm building, and I'm very excited about it. What is Verge Rangers? Speaking of ramp.
Yeah, so Verge Rangers is a 3 mana. Of course it's 3 mana. Is a 3 mana creature. It's a 3/3 creature. It's a human scout. It has first strike, and it says you may look at the top card of your library anytime. Now, that's the reason that this card is in the deck, because as long as I can look at the top card, I'll know
whether you want to attack with Yennett or not.
Exactly, because I know what I'm going to get with Yennett, so I can plan my attack a little better. However, it also says, as long as an opponent controls more lands than you, you may play lands from the top of your library. Since I know that if I know that there's a land there, I can play it, then look at the next card. And there's no restriction as far as multiple lands, but more importantly, I'm clearing the top of my library.
Right.
To get to a card that's going to be effective in combat, or effective, that I'll get to play. It's not going to be a stinky land that I flip over and be like, oh, look, it's a land. Which, sure, I get to draw it, but I would much rather play something fun and exciting. And Verge Ranger sort of clears out the top of the library while also acting as ramp, because I do get to play more lands. So...
Only, it allows you to keep up with your land.
Well, keep up with my opponents.
Right, but if you've played a land from your hand, you can't play from it.
Yeah.
But, you get to, it's essentially another card draw. Look at the top card before you play your land, and then decide.
Right, and with Verge Rangers out, you're never going to play the land in your hand until you've checked to see what's on top of your library after you draw. So... you're always going to maximize off the top. I guess, unless, of course, you need a particular color. But either way, the card works so well in so many ways with this deck that it just made sense to me to put it in.
Yeah. So, as we said, this deck has, all non-land cards are odd.
Yes.
So, what is the situation that you don't want to attack with Yennett? I guess it's situational.
If Yennett is going to die when you swing, then maybe you don't want to attack with Yennett. And I say maybe mostly because a lot of times the card on the top of your library is going to save you. Maybe it makes Yennett unblockable. Maybe it's a piece of removal that destroys the creature that could block. To be clear, Yennett has flying, vigilance, and a menace. So your opponent needs to have 2 flying creatures. So even if they do have 2 flying creatures, 1 piece of removal means now they can't block.
Right.
And, there's a handful of removal in the deck.
Oh, yeah. It seems to be the overwhelming pile here. And a lot of it, honestly, is kind of very straightforward. We've got Swords Plowshare, Deathbringer Liege, Mortify, Path to Exile, that kind of thing. But I really enjoy some of the out of left field things here, if only because they are odd.
Right.
You don't see much of Luminate Primordial. You don't see much of Ingarrick's Wake because they are so expensive.
Right. The deck does have a way to... There's not a ton of library manipulation, but there is some. So there's a lot of times when you can adjust it to make sure that those are the cards coming out and you're not having to pay for them. Because, those 2, Angel of Despair costs 7. There's some pretty pricey, and Void Winnower.
Shieldred.
One.
Shieldred. And I like that, even Phthis,
I think that's how it's pronounced.
Is it's 7 mana, 4 black pips, which as you were saying earlier, this is very much a blue and white deck. So you're not looking for that to be in your hand.
No.
But if you can get it off of Yennett, then it's an instant rather than a sorcery, which is amazing. But since this is Deck Tales, I will share a little story of. It's going to be a short one. I remember playing against Yennett once and having this huge board presence, and I think everybody had a pretty substantial board presence, and you blindly attacked with Yennett into an Ingarrick's Wake, and it was heartbreaking, but it was amazing because I mean you don't expect to see it. I mean it's a sorcery. You don't expect to see it in the middle of a turn, especially right as we're about to go into blockers. Everyone's getting ready to like figure out their blockers, and it's like, well, don't even have to worry about it anymore.
Right, and especially later in the game, sometimes you can just swing in with Yennett like that.
Yeah,
and if you don't find it, like if you are literally swinging in blind and you don't know what you're going to get and you don't get what you need, well, Yennett is a commander. You can pay more and get Yennett right back out again.
Yeah, it's funny because the more I talk about, or think about this deck, I realize how much of it is like it's an inverse of your Grenzo deck. You're flipping off the top instead of on the bottom.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just sometimes you've got 3 cards here in the 4 card. I guess you've got 4 or 5 cards in the library manipulation section, and it is generally going to be fairly blind flippy.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought of it as Grenzo.
Yeah.
But, you're right. It kind of is flipping off the front. It's flipping off the top instead of the bottom. In case you're wondering, the library manipulation package, there's an aqueous form, which is
also doubles as...
creature can't be blocked. But whenever it attacks, scry 1. And with this deck, Yennett is attacking most turns. So you're going to get to scry... So Yennett attacks, you can scry, and there's the ability, so you can stack them in whatever order you want. So I almost always stack it in the order of being able to scry, because I want to get something good on the top, if I can. The other 4 cards are Brainstorm. The idea of, the draw 3 and then put 2 on top. Well, you just put the one on top that you want in the right place, and you're good to go. Dream Cache. Essentially, Dream Cache does the same thing as Brainstorm, but costs a little more, and you could put stuff on the bottom. Ponder. I'm not even going to bother with that. And the obvious Sensei's Divining Top, which once it's out there, you're basically activating it every turn.
Yeah.
You're crazy not to. You can, if you're setting the top 3, just remember you're drawing the first card, and the next card is going to be the one that Yennett is going to flip for you, so you can just set it up accordingly.
Yeah. It's all very impressive how a lot of these cards end up doing multiple things. Obviously, a lot of the deck manipulation stuff is specific to that, but Dream Cache does kind of draw you as well. Like we were saying, Aqueous Form gets Yennett to be not blocked.
Right.
One of my favorites that kind of does a bit of, I guess not double duty, but one of my favorites that to just imagine coming off of the top is Fool's Demise. It says it's a 5-mana enchantment, 4 and a blue. Enchant creature, and when enchanted creature is put into a graveyard, return the creature to play under your control. When Fool's Demise is put into a graveyard from play, return Fool's Demise into its owner's hand. Which, you can play it on Yennett, sure, so that you can get past the commander tax every time.
Right.
And you can really kind of start looping it into just never really leaving until somebody they need the double spell.
Right. And you said get rid of the commander tax, and that's almost exactly the way it works, because Fool's Demise costs 5, which is the same as what Yennett costs. So in essence, when you replay the Fool's Demise, it's as though you're replaying Yennett, but without the tax.
Now,
so it feels like you're getting Yennett without tax.
Now, say you attack with Yennett.
Right.
And Forget I suppose any of this. Fool's Demise, you don't have to attach to your own creature.
You do not.
You can attach to somebody else's creature, and then when it dies, through any amount of your removal. So if you get Fool's Demise in hand, attach to something, attack with Yennett, and maybe if you get, I don't know, some sort of board wipe, you get their creature.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And you're going to get Fool's Demise back in your hand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it works well that way. To be fair, most of the time I'm probably just going to put it on the Sovereign. But there are times, I mean, if you already know the Sovereign can get through,
right,
then put it on one of the creatures you think that he might block with.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're probably not blocking with that creature.
Yeah.
So, it really does sort of set things up. And like you said, if I know I've got mass removal on the top of the library, well, all the better. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of the quick overview of this deck. When we get back, we're going to talk about some very specific instances of awesomeness in this deck.
All right. Sounds good.
So we'll be right back. This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by Todd. Why Todd? Why not Todd?
It certainly wasn't going to be brought to you by Steven.
Thank you, Todd. And now back to you. We're back with Yennett, the beautiful Sphinx in the sky. The amount of times that anyone at the table, especially, I mean, not to throw you under the bus, especially you, have forgotten that Yennett has Menace.
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time.
It's nuts.
All the time. I have lost games. I lost a game at BrewCon because I forgot Yennett had Menace. And then I ended up searching out a card that would make her unblockable, but I needed the mana to do something else to pump her, I think it was. And if I had just attacked, pumped, I would have won. And it was on the board. It was clear as day. And I forgot one of my own commander's abilities. Menace is easily the most underrated part of Yennett's ability. And this is coming from someone who champions vigilance like you wouldn't believe. I love vigilance on the card, but that flying and menace
that's a tough one.
Almost close to unblockable. You run into maybe somebody who's running a flying deck, somebody who has flying spirit tokens,
or even I mean spiders.
Right, but there are most decks simply cannot deal with this without removal. They have to use removal to get rid of Yennett. And if you hadn't already guessed, this deck really does push the Voltron aspect. It's usually Yennett. There are a handful of other creatures that I really enjoy using. Mostly of the other creatures that are around. Sunscorch Regent is one of the other cards that I will, try and use it to carry me through. Now, obviously, it's I'm not going to win with commander damage with Sunscorch Regent, but it's a 5-mana 4/3 flying creature.
Not bad.
Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on the Regent and gain a life.
Even better.
This thing gets huge really fast, so oftentimes all it takes is 1 or 2 cards. Make it unblockable, make it, some way to give it some extra boost.
Yeah, I mean, you got Silver Steel Paladin, you got Battle Mastery. You can, just give this thing double strike.
Right, and if it has double strike, given how big it's getting,
each counter is gonna be
Right. People can put blockers in front of it, but the blockers are unlikely to ever kill it because it's going to kill everything with first strike on the first strike rather than even wait for the second round of the double strike. So, so it turns into a pretty powerful beast. So,
I remember
dragon.
The thing I remember about this card, and the thing that if any of you out there ever play with this card, do not forget the 1 life for each spell. I remember I made a copy of it and only remembered the +1/+1 counters. I'm pretty sure I lost that game because I forgot to gain the 30 life, the incidental life gain. And you just kind of sit there and take it up, and you're like, all right.
It's easy to get the Regent out turn 4, turn 5.
Yeah.
And just you start putting +1 counters. If nobody deals with it, this thing can gain you a huge pile of life. Just a huge pile. Whether it's loot spells and other things that are happening, it just creeps up. And the thing is, it doesn't have any... It's a flyer, but if an opponent can deal with a large flyer, then they just let it go.
Right.
And suddenly nobody's getting any help.
People are seeing how big the creature's getting. They're not realizing. I remember, I think we played a game with Benny and this came out.
Yeah.
And there was one point in the game where somebody was like, Bruce, but your life total is what? And you're like, 60 something.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God.
Right. But this was a game on spell table.
Yeah.
The life total is there and apparent. And I wasn't doing anything to hide it.
No.
It's like, I gain a life. Bang. And it's just 1 life. And I love cards like this where it's just 1. I mean, simply put, think of the number of times you've played against somebody who's played, what's this? Any of the 1/1 creatures where you gain a life every time somebody plays a creature.
Oh, yeah.
So think of those games and think how obnoxious those cards were and how many life they gained. And now realize that this Regent also gains that 1 life for all those creatures, but it also gains it for every other spell too.
Yeah.
It's just, you do something, I gain a life.
Yeah.
And it's just over and over and over again.
It's really impressive, especially if you compare it to, Mana Gorger Hydra, which essentially does the same thing, but I don't think that the Mana Gorger has
the life link.
And I feel like whenever that comes out onto the board, okay, it's got trample, but whenever that comes out on the board, it's this huge scourge, and I feel like nobody really pays attention to as this huge issue.
Right, and it is a freaking monster. So
yeah, it looks like it. You've got a couple cards in here that stand out above the rest. This one I've never seen, but I would love to. Ghastly Conscription.
Yeah.
5 red. 5 black sorcery. Exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard in a face-down pile. Shuffle that pile, then manifest those cards. Manifest says, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. So you go after the person with the biggest graveyard. You get a bunch of 2/2s. They don't, correct?
That's right. I get all your cards, and they're manifest.
Yeah.
So they're face down. So sometimes you don't even want to go after the person who has the largest graveyard. You want to go against the person who is in the same colors that you're in, because manifest, you can play those face down. If it's a creature, you can play it.
Yeah.
But you need to have the right colors. Now, I have a bunch of ways to make all 5 colors, so there's that. But and it just piles up. I have yet to have that one come out yet.
Yeah.
It hasn't shown itself in any of my games yet. So I can't tell you how good or bad it is, but I'm looking forward to seeing that come out.
Oddly enough, I think the biggest scourge in this deck is Sanctum Prelate. Your weirdest prison card in here.
Yeah.
It's 1 white 2/2 human cleric. As Sanctum Prelate enters the battlefield, choose a number, any number. Non-creature spells with the converted mana cost equal to the chosen number can't be cast.
Right.
So what are you going for, Bruce?
4.
4.
It's almost always 4, unless somebody is playing a spell that is just absolutely miserable. I know it's coming, and then I'll choose whatever number that is.
But Bruce, you can't play 4 then.
That's right, I can't. And I will agree to those terms.
Okay.
The other one is if you get the prelay out very early, and you feel like a particular dirtbag, you pick 2. And all those 2-mana rocks, all those 2-mana creatures, all the 2-mana enchantments, and everything else that works to build up your opponent's game states and get them ready for later on, just get stuffed, and it's just miserable. And I said creatures, but it's non-creature spells. Yeah. So your 2-mana creatures would be fine. But either way, the prelate it can be miserable. But yeah, I almost always choose 4.
Because you're not gonna be bothered by it.
I'm not going to be bothered by it, and there are a lot of really great spells, really great non-creature spells at 4. So I want to run that. And in case you're wondering, I did open a couple more of these in the boxes of Commander Legends.
Oh, good.
So I'm looking forward to a 60-card deck where a lot of players are not going to be playing most of their deck. Maybe I'll change my mind after a turn or two, because that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but I think for one game it might be a blast.
You know it's a 2-mana spell?
What's that?
Cyclonic Rift.
Well, all the more reason to pick 2.
Yeah. I think we've been building up to this moment.
Yeah.
Corrupted Conscience.
Yes.
3 blue, enchantment aura, enchant creature. You control enchanted creature.
Yes.
Enchanted creature has infect.
Yes.
This is not an infect build, but you can do some crazy things with this, Bruce.
We just described Fool's Demise earlier in the podcast and what it does, and how you can play it on Yennett, or you can play it on an opponent's creature and eventually get the opponent's creature and do all kinds of fun things with that. Corrupted Conscience is exactly the same. I can play it and take away an opponent's blocker. I can play it and get their best creature. Oh, by the way, it now has infect, so when it hits freaking hard.
Oh my god.
I can play it on Yennett. I find that if I end up drawing Corrupted Conscience, quite often I just hold it in my hand, because it seems like it's only a matter of time until someone is going to steal Yennett from me. They're going to try and take Yennett, and I'm going to like, oh, I'm taking Yennett back, and you're going to be really unhappy that I have taken Yennett back. And for those of you who are thinking Yennett's only a 3/5, they're going to have to hit 4 times. There are so many ways to get Yennett's power a little bit higher.
Oh, yeah.
So even if Yennett only hits, most of the time Yennett will hit for 5 easily. And quite often, I believe I have won a game by doing the full 21 commander damage in one swing.
Ooh!
So, Yennett can be really miserable. And with Corrupted Conscience, you don't even have to go that far.
Yeah.
And
I mean, honestly, you don't really need to justify somebody taking your Yennett. I mean, you've got card draw, you've got potential free spells, you've got a flying menace, and on top of it, you don't get those things.
Right.
Which, yeah. Why would you?
Well, exactly. So, but Corrupted Conscience has shown up in a lot of my games, and I mean a lot. It seems like it shows up just about every time I play this deck, which is kind of surprising, but there it is. So I've had a lot of fun and a lot of experience with it, and seen it countered more often than I wish.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I let you play it once because you stole my Rurik Thar.
With the Corrupted Conscience?
Yep.
Nice.
You stole my Rurik Thar, and Rurik Thar says that whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Rurik Thar deals 6 damage to them. needless to say, it needed to be taken care of immediately.
Yeah. Because
But
that's infect damage, baby.
that's infect damage. That would be a fast one. But
Yeah.
that was an impressive, exciting big play.
It was a lot of fun, and I think to be fair, I didn't even really think that one through because I wasn't really thinking about the infect. I was just thinking
A 6/6
a 6/6 trample with infect.
Vigilance?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
but
whatever.
Big dude who's going to do some serious infect damage, and then was like, "Oh wow, that's big." So I had a lot of fun with that.
All right, with our last couple minutes, let's talk about cards that you wish to see more in this deck, or at least like effects you wish to see more. But before that, let's bring it down a little. Talk about things that you're thinking of cutting.
Okay, so the primary issue I have with the deck is the fact that there are no 2 mana cards. When you in the early game, you pay the price. On turn 2, you rarely have 2 1-mana spells to play. So early on in the game, and I would say this lasts up until almost turn 6, you're kind of behind. So you're struggling a little bit because you are behind. It's just then Yennett comes out and things start to equalize after another turn or two. So that's where I'm struggling a little bit. As far as cards that I'm looking to cut, Black Market is,
I was thinking the same thing.
Is fine, but it doesn't. The deck is relying on Yennett playing the spells for free. So Black Market is nice, but not super necessary.
Yeah, it helps with things like fifth assist.
Yeah,
but like other than that, like you've got ways to make mana, and you're not gonna be wiping the board and having Black Market all that often.
Right. Another card I'm considering removing is Void Winnower. For those who don't know, Void Winnower is a 9-mana Eldrazi. It's an 11/9 creature, but it says your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs.
How odd.
How odd indeed. And your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs. Void Winnower, it has a tendency to shut games down. Your opponents can't play half of their spells. It's just a little too oppressive. I mean, Sanctum Prelate is one thing, but Void Winnower is a whole other story. And in this deck, the Void Winnower can come out just because of the way Cryptic Sovereigns works. So I'm a little reluctant to leave it in there. I think it's going to stick around for at least a couple more games, but I'm not sure that's really something that should be there. And the nice part is when we're talking about the 7 and the 9 mana cost cards, I feel like a lot of them are just cards I can swap in and out.
Oh yeah.
Just take them out, find some other cool effect and put that in. So like Ghastly Conscription, it fits in the deck because it's a 7 mana card.
Right.
But, if you take it out and put something else in, it'll be just as fine. So that's sort of where it is there. There's always a couple that I'm never really sure if they should stick around, but for the most part I'm kind of happy with where I'm at. I'll give it a few more games before I start pulling out some of the bigger costed ones.
I think a lot of this deck personally seems very run-of-the-mill white, blue, black, and I think that just happens because a lot of these cards that want to protect, want to destroy, etc., end up being, a lot of the quote unquote staples end up being odd because they're 1 or 3.
Right. Well, and a lot of the staples in the colors that is Yennett do exactly what you want them to do for Yennett's for the deck. So that's why that's why there's a lot of the cards in here are fairly predictable and maybe not super exciting.
But I mean, I think it's been interesting to see cards come in and out according to like trying to stay on theme.
Right.
It's been very exciting to see what stays and what goes.
Right.
I mean, we were talking earlier about the courts. I mean, they're 4-mana enchantments.
Yeah.
So like it's like, oh, like that feels bad if you flip it off the top.
Right.
Granted, it just goes to your hand, so it doesn't feel too bad.
Right.
But now everybody knows you have it.
Yeah.
What was the question that I had that I was going to wrap things up with? What do you want to see more from this deck? Like what kind of effects would you be willing to sacrifice other effects for?
I have to start looking at cards that allow me to put pressure on my opponents going wide.
Mm-hmm.
This deck right now is very Voltron, and the way it plays out really lends to just piling in with Yennett. And you build around that. So even if other creatures come out, they're there to block while Yennett swings, kind of thing. So I'm looking for cards that offer a little more range. That, can I create an army and swing all in with that? It's part of the reason why Ghastly Conscription is there. Is the idea that it would give me another way to win. So that's probably where the deck is headed. A little less, tune down the Voltron a little bit and tune up other options.
Yeah, have it be, somewhat wide rather than just super tall. It seems to be like in a really solid place compared to where it was a year ago.
Yeah, and I'm having a lot of fun playing it. So
yeah, it definitely has, like, from the first time you've played it, made leaps and bounds in terms of playability.
Right.
And you have not only honed in on your theme, but made the deck do deck,
right?
Which is always exciting. That's the thing with this deck, is that it's either going to be a land or odd. So you got a 60-40 shot there.
Right. The other fun part with this deck is a lot of people, when they're playing against it, look at it and they say, okay, so you've got blue, so they're concerned that you're going to play it, that you've got counterspells. Well, you only have to know what Yennett does. So if I flip the card, I can play it. Well, if it's a counterspell, I don't want to play it. And do I really want you to know I've got counterspells in hand? No. So this deck doesn't play that way. It is not reactive at all.
Yeah.
Because the idea is that card that gets flipped, it needs to be able to be used now.
Yeah, you don't want to depend on something else already being on the stack, because it can't be.
Right. It's in the middle of my attack.
Yeah.
So I try not to use...
Yeah.
I tried not to use a lot of counterspells.
I'm trying to figure out how that would even work. I think you would have to add more top deck manipulation
to be able to have the counter to draw it on my draw, as opposed to having it sit there.
Yeah.
And that is the way around it, because I'm already doing that with land. Try and get the land off the top.
That sounds awful.
Yeah. So there are ways to do it, but and then on top of that, if you're doing that, am I going to stick to my odd mana cost rule?
Right.
Do I want to play
cancel
and
all the cancels,
or arcane denial or whatever else? So because at that point you don't care if it costs 1, 2, or 3, because you're never going to play it with using Yennett's ability. So why not run something that's an even? But that's a point that I didn't really want to get to with this deck. I didn't want to have to try and work the balance so tight.
Yeah, because the thing that really replaces the counters in this deck are the ability to play Yennett over and over again, or do things reactive to your opponents. I mean, you've got, removal, so then you just play the thing again out of either your graveyard or command zone or whatever.
Right.
Or you just end up with more mana or incidental free spells to be able to counterbalance the not having any counters in this deck.
Right.
And I mean, that's a better way to play.
Yeah. It's more fun that way anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for this deck again and again and again. I always like to see it come out, just to see what I like the
what's going to happen this time.
Yeah, I like the performance of flipping the top card, even if you already know what it is. It's like a magic trick. Bruce the Magician.
Ooh. Let's go play some Magic.
Let's go play some Magic. I'll play my Obosh deck, so it'll be odds versus evens. Right. I don't have an Obosh deck. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great night. We're Temple of Falsepod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Oh my god. Have a great night, and may your fifth land be the temple. Oh, fifth land. That's odd.
Fifth land.
Oh! Bye! Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your fifth land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!